On the second night, I stopped walking, not because I found shelter, because I accepted I was going to die, alone, in a place with no name, and the worst part wasn't the fear of death. It was realizing I'd been screaming for help in a language the forest doesn't speak. By the time the Yanomami found me 36 hours after my canoe flipped, I had stopped using words entirely, and that's when I finally started to understand. I was 37 years old, working the Rio Negro as a guide for fishing tourists. I thought I knew every bend, every rapid, every hidden channel. I'd navigated those waters for 15 years. But the river doesn't care how long you think you've known it. One moment of carelessness, crossing a rapid I'd crossed 1,000 times, and my canoe flipped. I went under. When I surfaced, the current had carried me 2 kilometers downstream, and I had no idea which direction was home. The canoe hit a submerged log I didn't see. I didn't have 2 seconds. The water was colder than it should be in the Amazon. That's how I knew I was deep. When I finally crawled onto the bank, vomiting river water, I looked for landmarks, anything familiar. The samama tree that marked the old fishing spot, the burned stump where lightning hit, the bend where the caiman nested. Every direction looked identical, and that's when fear started whispering, you don't know where you are. First hour, I walked with purpose, picked a direction based on I don't even remember, the angle of sunlight, a gut feeling, desperation masquerading as logic. I told myself, rivers always lead somewhere. Find water, follow it downstream, eventually hit a settlement. Just endless trees that all looked like brothers. By hour 3, I realized I'd passed the same fallen cecropia trunk twice. I was walking in circles. Hour 6, the sun was falling, and I still had no idea which direction was civilization. That's when panic stopped being something I could control. It became physical. My chest tightened, vision narrowed, hands shook so badly I couldn't grip a vine to pull myself up. I tried to remember survival training. Moss grows on north side of trees, or is it south? In the Amazon, does that even apply? Near the equator, does moss have a preference? I couldn't remember, and not remembering felt like drowning on dry land. You haven't experienced darkness until you've spent night in the Amazon without fire. It's not just absence of light, it's presence of everything you can't see, but can hear. Every crack is a jaguar. Every rustle is a bushmaster. Every silence is something holding its breath, deciding. I heard a jaguar that night, close, maybe 50 meters. The sound they make, it's not a roar, it's a saw cutting through wood. Second morning, 20 hours lost. I'd had no food, little water, no sleep. Looking for signs written in Portuguese, expecting the forest to speak my language. Didn't see it. I ignored scratched bark that marked territorial boundaries, safe zones where predators don't hunt. Didn't recognize it. I stepped over dung from a howler monkey troop nearby, which meant fruit trees, which meant food. Didn't understand it. The forest was teaching. I was refusing to learn, because I was still trying to conquer my way out. Instead of listening my way out, I thought I was hallucinating. 3 Yanomami men materialized like they'd grown from the trees. Later, I learned they'd been tracking me for 6 hours, watching, deciding if I was worth saving, or if I was a threat. I tried to speak, Portuguese first, then broken Spanish, then English. They stared at me the way you'd stare at a parrot screeching nonsense. The eldest, his name I never learned it, held up his hand, palm forward, universal, silence. That gesture saved my life, because it was the first moment I stopped trying to be rescued, and started trying to understand. They didn't speak, not one word in 36 hours together. At first, I thought they couldn't speak Portuguese, but it wasn't about language. They were teaching me, forcing me to stop using my voice and start using my eyes. We walked for maybe 20 minutes before the eldest stopped suddenly, held up his hand, pointed down. I looked, saw nothing. He knelt, gestured for me to kneel. Then he pointed again, slowly this time, and I saw it. Taper tracks, 3-toed, deep impressions in mud, fresh. He pointed at the tracks, then pointed ahead, then made a drinking motion. Water ahead. The tracks were showing the way. I'd walked past a dozen of these yesterday. blind, for 6 hours. They walked me through a language I didn't know existed. Every mark, every sound, every absence of sound. Information, taper tracks, lead to water always. Scratched bark shows climbing route safe trees. Moss grows thicker, where moisture collects follow it to streams. Broken spider webs mean large animals passed recently avoid their path. Fruit on ground means canopy, food, abundant monkeys, which means you're near the river because they don't go deep into terra firma. I had walked this forest for 15 years, but I'd been blind, speaking when I should have been reading, shouting when I should have been silent. The eldest spoke to me that night. I understood nothing, and everything. His hands moved as he talked, pointing at the forest, at me, at the fire we shared. But I heard it, not the words, the lesson. He was saying, this forest doesn't want to kill you. You are not its enemy, but you've forgotten how to be its student. You scream your fear, and the forest hears. I don't belong here. But if you listen, if you read, if you move like water instead of stone, the forest will carry you home. I cried that night, not from fear, from shame. I'd spent 15 years using the forest, taking from it, guiding tourists through it like it was a museum. But I'd never joined it, never become part of its language. I was always a translator, never a speaker. The third morning, something changed. I stopped trying to survive, and started being part of the forest. I saw a broken fern and knew, we passed this way yesterday. I heard howler monkeys northwest and knew, river is opposite direction because they avoid human paths. I smelled wet earth, stronger, and knew, we're close. The Yanomami saw me learning. The youngest one, he started testing me. He'd stop, wait for me to notice why. A termite mound blocking our path, poisonous smoke, if disturbed. A fresh jaguar scrape on a tree territory marker. We detour. Each time I got it right, they'd nod. When I got it wrong, they'd correct with a gesture. No shame, just try again. I realized. This is how children learn in the forest. Not through lectures, through observation, correction, repetition, silent education. When we reached the river, the eldest man placed his hand on my shoulder. First time he'd touched me beyond pulling me up from mud or steadying me on a log. He looked at me, really looked tanned. I knew what he was saying without language. Now you know. The forest never wanted you dead. You just didn't know how to listen. They left me there, put me in a canoe they'd pulled from somewhere, pointed down river, and paddled away upriver without looking back. I never learned their names, never spoke a single word they understood. But they taught me more in 36 hours than 15 years had. Because they didn't teach me about the forest. They taught me to become forest, to read instead of yell, to listen instead of demand, to move with humility instead of arrogance. When I returned, everyone wanted to hear the story. They expected drama, jaguar attacks, snake bites, dramatic survival. But how do you explain that you were saved? By being forced into silence. That 3 men who did you want to speak your language taught you more about listening than a lifetime of speaking. They didn't understand. To them, I was lucky the Yanomami found me. But the truth was harder. I was lucky they decided I was worth teaching, because they could have just pointed me downriver the moment they found me. But instead, they slowed down, walked with me for a day and a half, showed me signs, corrected my blindness. Why? I still don't know. Maybe because they saw in me what the forest sees in everyone who gets lost, potential for learning, or death, and they chose to give me the first option. I'm 70 years old now. That was 33 years ago. I never saw those 3 Yanomami men again. Never learned if they even remember me or if I was just another lost fool they guided home that season. But I remember them, every day, because they gave me something more valuable than rescue. They gave me a language that works in silence. I've spent 3 decades teaching tourists how to survive the Amazon. But what I'm really teaching is what they taught me. Shut up, watch, listen. The forest is screaming information at you, but you'll never hear it if you don't stop making noise. This scar isn't from being lost. It's from a bushmaster bite 10 years later. Different story, different lesson. But I survived that too, because of what the Yanomami taught me in silence. When that snake struck, I didn't panic, didn't run. I read the signs, distance to help, venom speed, my heartbeat. Walked slowly to village, explained calmly what happened. Controlled breathing slowed the spread. The healers saved me, but the Yanomami saved me first years before, by teaching me, panic is noise, survival is silence. If you're ever lost, truly lost, not just turned around, here's what they taught me. Stop walking, stop yelling, Stop trying to force your way out. Sit down, be silent, and pay attention. The forest will show you the way, not in signs written in your language, but in moss growing thicker on one side, in bird flight patterns pointing toward water, in the smell of wet earth, telling you rain's coming and you need shelter, in the quality of silence that says, predator nearby, don't move. It's all there, every answer, every direction, written in a language older than words. You just have to be quiet enough to read it. I've walked this forest for 50 years since that day I got lost, and it still teaches me, every time, because the lesson isn't, don't get lost. The lesson is, being lost is when learning begins. Those Yanomami men didn't rescue me from the forest. They rescued me from my own noise, from my arrogance, from thinking I was separate from the trees and rivers and animals. They taught me I was never lost in the forest. I was lost from it. If you want to walk these trails with me too, hear what the forest whispers to those who've earned its language. Stay close. Subscribe, because I have more scars, more silences, more lessons written in signs you've been walking past your whole life. The forest is speaking. The question is, are you listening? Cláudia é uma imposto automóvel e pode cometer erros. Por favor, verifique as respostas.